Ladies and gentlemen, pack your bags. We're going to Japan.
Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so.
What do we have to learn from Japan? Well, in the late 1980s, Japan had a booming high-tech economy. But some monetary policy missteps led to an excessive appreciation of Japan's currency, the yen, as well as financial markets and the real estate market. And then the bubble burst. Sort of. More like it deflated slowly. Instead of allowing the economy to collapse amid a financial crisis, the Bank of Japan and the Japanese government intervened with an influx of liquidity, yen, to support the banking system and the large corporations. Sound familiar? But in Japan's case, the authorities' interventions were more like a slow drip rather than one short burst. Although the actions by the Japanese authorities may have prevented a deeper crisis at the moment, the result was a prolonged period of economic stagnation. The 1990s in Japan were called the lost decade, but the stock market, which is often an indicator of the health of the overall economy, didn't really hit bottom until 2003, and then found another bottom a full decade later, so it was relatively flat for that additional decade. In all, it was nearly a 25-year bottoming process. On a related note, do you like zombies? Not that kind. The story here is about so-called zombie banks and zombie corporations that were kept alive for years by those Japanese interventions that even helped companies that really had no longer any prospect of actually making money. These were Japan's Walking Dead for well over a decade in some cases. It's not as much fun as it sounds, especially if you were an investor during that time. But at least it was a soft landing for many, and at best it may have paved the way for Japan to reemerge as a global economic power. There are lingering issues there, including a legacy of excessive public debt and aging demographics, but that's a longer story for another time. So what can we learn from this? Well, let's bring things back to the US now. Amid our 2008 financial crisis, our central bank and our government used a shock and awe approach to support the financial markets all at once, flooding the system with liquidity, money, in a big hurry. It wasn't just enough to engineer a soft landing, as with Japan. It was enough to quickly spur on another boom. The downside is that we may now be again in an unsustainable position with our real comeuppance still ahead of us. I'm hoping our policymakers will learn from the past and do things differently next time, but what seems more likely is more of the same, and then some. So here's a not-so-short list of measures that our federal government here in the US and our central bank can undertake to manipulate the market for money and investments and juice our economy with short-term benefits but potentially longer-term costs. Riveting, no? No. Each of those could be the subject of an entire separate video, but we're not going that deep here. For now, suffice it to say that most of these policy actions were part of the overall response to the last crisis here in the US, while some are ideas that have been floated in anticipation of the next one. The biggest wildcard I see right now in the US is political risk. Will our current administration take unprecedented executive action to massage or manipulate the financial markets, even actions that are explicitly against the law, in order to ensure re-election? It's a fair question, at least. And will those actions be taken publicly, Or might they be handled on a clandestine basis in some cases to prevent public concern or public backlash? I'm just asking the questions.
It's a conspiracy, man!
No, it's not. And who let that guy in? I did. Okay. So why am I telling you all this? Well, regardless of how things unfold next here in the US, today's adventure should be an object lesson of two kinds. One, Japan shows yet another example of a stock market that fell and stayed low for decades, reminding us again that the stock market is really only a place for your long-term investments. And two, when we look at both Japan's crisis and the most recent American one, it's a reminder of how important it is to stay invested through thick and thin, because you really can't know when the bottom will come, and you're going to want to be in the market then, whenever that then is. Again, I say all this with the assumption that you've already built a financial buffer of 6 to 12 months of your personal expenses in life, set aside in a low-risk savings or investment vehicle before you risk your hard-earned money in the stock market. All right, well, that's it for today, you guys. Thanks for tuning in again. If anything here was interesting or useful to you, please click like below and share it with anyone who you might look to for financial advice. Once again, I'll close with a disclaimer. This material is offered for informational and educational purposes only. No part of this video constitutes personal, financial, or investment advice. I assume no liability for any losses arising from any financial or investment decisions taken based on the content provided herein. For personal financial advice, always consult with your financial planner or your registered investment advisor. All right, that's all I've got today. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.